I'll give a quick intro and just everyone that I'm super excited to share today. I'm going to give you guys a ton of tactics on LinkedIn outreach and how you can actually run your own and generate leads. So we're going to dive into some good stuff today there. But Kai, I'll let you kick it off or anything else you want to say before I can dive into the presentation.
Excellent. So this is the second time I've seen this presentation, my friends. I have to say it's one of the best presentations on using LinkedIn, on LinkedIn outreach that I've seen. As Jake and I were chatting about beforehand, a number of my one-on-one coaching students, a number of my colleagues took the first version of this presentation they saw, implemented it for their business, and saw great results. So I'm really excited to have Jake as a guest expert today to help teach us how to use LinkedIn to get more leads. Jake, I'll pass it over to you and we could kick it off.
Sounds good. I will get the presentation pulled up here. And let me know, can you guys all see the presentation on your side? I'm going to take that as a yes.
I think there's a slight lag. And for folks that are asking, yes, we will be sending out a recording post-call. That'll go out about 1 to 2 days after this webinar wraps up. And folks are saying, yes, they can see it. So I think we are good to dive on in.
All right, sounds good. Well, everyone, today I'm going to be sharing with you a complete system and framework on how to use LinkedIn to generate leads. And so I run a company called Lead Cookie where we're a done-for-you LinkedIn prospecting service. But in today's call, I'm literally going to give you all of the secrets, all of the tactics of what we actually do at our company and how we generate leads. Give you the scripts, the frameworks, all of it there. So before we dive into that, though, what I want to do is start off sharing that before I was actually running a company doing LinkedIn outreach, I was consulting, and I was basically focused around this idea of how do agencies and consultants win new clients. And this was really like the core focus of what I was doing, and I was consistently, working with companies, testing tactics out of myself and my clients to figure out what are the best ways to help really get new business. And along that journey, at some point, I started to realize that I was getting a lot of customers from LinkedIn. And I wasn't even being really that intentional about this, but I would just kind of hop on LinkedIn every couple of days, post things, leave a comment. I was just kind of like barely using it, and I was getting customers from LinkedIn just kind of by accident almost. And so at some point I realized, okay, there's definitely opportunity here. And so I want to really, dive into this deeper and figure out, what is the best tactics you can use on LinkedIn. So at that point, what I did is I went out and I just went on a quest to research and learn everything I could on LinkedIn. So I looked at all the thought leaders like Josh Turner and John Nemo and what all these guys were doing and talking about as like the best tactics to use on LinkedIn. And I started basically running and using those tactics for my own consulting business to get new customers. And what I found from it was I was really amazed at the results. In the first 30 days, I booked 11 phone calls. I had another 19 leads I was still working. And then within 2 months, I actually closed 3 deals just from all this LinkedIn outreach. So I was just like blown away by this and was like, wow, that produced results quicker than any other tactic that I've tried. I have a lot of other great channels that have been effective, but this was just like really quick and it started immediately producing results. And so that was a point where basically I decided I was going to kick up and start what has now become Lead Cookie, which is where we're doing done-for-you LinkedIn prospecting. And so basically our company at this point now has run over, actually I think this number is up to 80. I didn't actually update this presentation or this number between our past calls, Kai, but I believe we're running right around 80 campaigns on LinkedIn. And so through that, we have learned a ton of stuff on what works, what doesn't work, and how to make LinkedIn campaigns effective. And so on today's call, I'm going to share with you what those look like. I'm going to give you the scripts and the frameworks and how to make that successful. So here's the agenda on what we're going to cover today. First, I'm going to talk about what we've learned running those roughly 80 campaigns on LinkedIn for different outreach campaigns and different types of companies. Second, I'm going to give you the exact process we use to generate leads. And then third, I'm going to teach you how to actually nurture those leads and give you some tips there because just because you get someone responding and engaging on LinkedIn, you probably also need to get them onto a call and actually make a sale. So I'm going to give you a few tips there on just how to actually nurture and move those leads from LinkedIn to actual phone call. So to start off, let's dive into what we learned running those 80 campaigns. So the first really important thing we learned is that niching wins. So basically what we found is that if you have a narrow niche and a good value proposition, you're going to see great results with this. If you're kind of niche or your value proposition is kind of a little weak or unvalidated or untested yet, you might see some good results, but it's probably not going to be amazing. And if you're a generalist and you say, I do web development for, anybody in the world, or I do SEO and PPC for small businesses, like you're probably not going to get that many results. And so having that narrow niche and that value proposition is insanely important to this tactic and really any marketing. But one of the things we came to realize through this is, that if you don't have that, there's a failure. And so one of the examples is that we had this generalist design agency in San Francisco. These guys were super reputable. They had a great portfolio and client list. They'd even been in the industry working for 20 years and all this stuff, but they hardly got any engagement just because they were kind of generalists and we were reaching out as a generalist. Now we were able to actually pivot them and say, hey, let's narrow your LinkedIn down and say, let's focus at nonprofits, because over 50% of their work was nonprofits. And as soon as we changed the messaging and the targeting to saying, design agency are focusing on nonprofits, or we help nonprofits through, web and, promotional design. I can't remember the exact tagline, but as soon as we narrowed down on that nonprofit niche, we immediately start getting results and phone calls, and they were actually getting business out of it. So if you're generalist, you're just going after any business out there, you're not going to see much results with this. So you've got to narrow down and get focused on a specific value proposition. Another example of a success we had was kind of a specialist software development shop in Birmingham. And their tagline was, I help blue-collar companies automate manual processes with custom software. And again, in like the first couple months there, we generated 63 leads for them. And they consistently were booking phone calls and getting opportunities from this. They worked with us for over 10 months actually operating and running their profile. So that very specific focus, saying we work with basically manufacturing and HVAC, kind of this blue collar industry companies, and helping them automate processes through software led to a really good results and really good response rate for them. So what we kind of learned from this, and the way we like to kind of think about this, is that basically this is kind of the formula for if you're going to see results from this. You have your value proposition here, you have your niching, whatever it is you do and who you serve, and then you have this LinkedIn outreach tactics that I'm going to teach you. And as I said, we've run 80 of these campaigns at this point. And so if you basically realize that we're running the exact same scripts and framework, we're doing the exact same 4 types of messages over and over again. And the only thing that's changing is really the value proposition and the messaging for that individual person. But we have some people who are literally like, hey, whoa, slow it down. I have too many leads. And we have people saying that. And on the other flip side, we had people early when we didn't realize this formula that were generalists, and they were just literally getting nothing. It was just no responses. And so without that kind of niche value proposition and something that's validated here, you're not going to see results here. And if you're not seeing results, I challenge you that it's not the tactic that's the problem. The problem is probably in your value proposition here. So that is kind of one of the really big important things we learned, and I can't stress this enough. The other thing we learned is basically that this is going to be a decent time investment. If you're going to run this tactic on your own, you're looking at probably about 90 minutes per day to kind of run these tactics on your own. There's pieces of this you can do with kind of Duck Soup and some LinkedIn Helper and some tools out there that might get it down to about an hour a day, but it's still a good amount of time if you handle this on your own. If you end up hiring a virtual assistant, which we see a lot of people do, or you end up hiring our service lead cookie, you're looking at about a 20-minute per day investment where you're actually focused on just handling the responses of the leads that come through to you. So that just, again, gives you an idea on just what that time investment looks like. And again, it sounds like Kai, like some people in your audience have taken this, they're actually running with it. So they're putting in that time. You could scale some of this back and not go, full speed and get that down to, maybe 30 to 60 minutes a day, but it will take some time to ramp these up on your own. The other thing we learned is you need to start slowly. And you need to have LinkedIn Sales Navigator to do these tactics. So everything I'm teaching you today, You must have LinkedIn Sales Navigator, not premium and not free, or you won't be able to do the volume of approach that we're taking. The other thing is if you don't touch your LinkedIn for years and it just sits there, and then one day you get on and you start sending 100 connection requests per day, they're going to kind of freak out and say, hey, I think your profile got hacked. So what you need to do is, when you start doing these, ramp this up, do 20 the first few days, do 40 the next few days. And over the course of about 2 weeks, get up to 100 outbound connection requests, which I'll explain a bit more later. But basically everything we teach you here, kind of slowly ramp that up over 2 weeks. You can kind of test things, get used to the process, and so you don't trigger anything within LinkedIn. So those are kind of some of the key pieces of what we learned, but now I want to dive into the cookie cutter lead generation process. So this is the exact process that we're using to generate leads on LinkedIn. And so within that, there are 3 ingredients to this cookie cutter process. And the first is that we basically do the profile optimization, getting your profile ready and optimized to convert. The second is going to be sending outbound connection requests, and along with that, we're going to send some drip messages. The third is how we're going to ramp up traffic to your profile and get more eyeballs on your LinkedIn profile using some very cool little tricks and tactics. So the first piece here in terms of the LinkedIn profile optimization. So there is a ton of stuff you can do on LinkedIn. If you haven't already, there's like a little bar when you start building your LinkedIn profile that's trying to get you up to 100% on having everything complete. Obviously, go through that, as that's kind of like the baseline. But really within the LinkedIn profile optimization, there's the 80-20 of what we're looking at to generate results and to get people interested. And so there's 2 main tweaks that we recommend to people. The first is going to be getting your headline optimized. And so in your LinkedIn profile, right underneath your name, you're going to see this little headline. And right here, this was what mine was when I was consulting, said, I help agencies and consultants win their dream clients. And so this is super important, having this headline here, because basically this follows you all over LinkedIn. So when you post something in the news feed, this shows up and it's kind of right there under your name. When you show up in the Who's Viewed Your Profile section, the tagline's there. It shows up in the Messenger window. It shows up pretty much all over LinkedIn. This kind of follows you around and literally just sits underneath your name. And the key thing here is that most people just put, president or CEO or, agency owner or something there. And they aren't using this to kind of put a positioning statement that's going to hook someone in. And so the simple I help X, do or accomplish Y is a great framework, a simple thing you can do to kind of hook people in and really get them interested. So optimization number 1 is change that tagline from that simple kind of title to actually a benefit-oriented statement. The second tweak is that when you get to the body copy of your profile and the description under your company or whatever you're listed there, is that it should not just be resume style about you. That's how LinkedIn started, as this kind of place for resumes, but what you really want to do here is make this more like a sales page. You want to talk about, what you do, who you serve, what benefits it brings them. Think of kind of the standard kind of, sales page marketing, where you would basically be talking about your customers, the problems you solve for them, and why, you can help them and everything. So taking that simple framework and not just giving your life story, but instead talking about who you serve and how you help them is really kind of the next big tweak to get into that profile. So there's a lot more you can do on the profile optimization, but again, those are the 2 primary tweaks I would say you'd want to do as a baseline before getting started with this. The second piece of this, the second ingredient here, is going to be the actual lead generation piece of it. And so with this, basically it is really, really simple what we're going to ask you to do here. You're going to get into LinkedIn Sales Navigator. And if you've ever used it before, you've got all these super advanced search criteria over here on the left where you can get really, really targeted on how to do your actual LinkedIn outreach. And basically what you're going to do is put that search queue together, and you're then going to start sending messages to people. And you're going to send kind of a really casual connection request script here. So you're going to send something saying, hey, I was browsing your profile. You notice we work in a similar space, so I thought I'd reach out to connect. So something very casual. This is like a very vanilla version of it. You can definitely try to tweak or customize the message as well accordingly. But really just trying to get something. The goal of this first message is that you're sending in this connection request is to really just try to get them to accept your connections. You're not trying to make a pitch. You're just trying to open the door, because when they accept this, you now have the ability to send them multiple more connection requests. Now, the one thing I do typically do is I put my tagline here underneath my name. And sometimes you'll have people that literally from that connection request will inquire or want to hop on a call if you've got a good value proposition. So again, simple. The goal of that first connection request is simply to get them to accept so you can start that conversation. Now, what you're going to eventually do is, again, you're going to ramp this up over about 2 weeks, but you're going to start to send about 100 of those connection requests per day, where what you do is kind of customize the first name, and then you kind of start going, you can really kind of leave the rest of that rather templated and kind of use that approach. If you've got a really small niche market, you can kind of take a more personal approach to it, but with a lot of what we do, or if you've got a large market, you can do this at about 100 per day. What we typically see is somewhere around 15 to 30% of those people will accept. Definitely changes a bit, varied based on industry and your value proposition. But that's just kind of a rough framework of how many people accept. And when someone accepts, what we're going to do is we're going to drip them non-salesy messages over time. And so what we're not going to do, though, is we're not just going to go start blasting them with sales pitches. We're going to kind of follow this simple framework here. First, we're going to send that connection request, which is the goal to just get accepted. And then second, we're going to ask them a question to try to facilitate a conversation. So my question, whenever I'm reaching out, is, hey, what are your primary lead generation channels? By asking this to people, I get them talking about lead generation. I get some people that say, hey, word of mouth and referrals. I have other people that say, hey, we're doing pay-per-click, Facebook ads. We've got strategic partnerships. So I get all of these kind of different responses, and those form kind of the basis of what can become a conversation. And it helps me kind of qualify or disqualify a lead a bit to understand where they're at. Some people respond back and they say, we've got referrals and there's more work than we can handle. And it's like, cool. So they don't really need my help. And so, thinking of what question you can ask to kind of provoke around your value proposition, again, is just super valuable. It's just a great way to kind of get that conversation going and kind of build trust. If they don't answer that question, what you're going to do is then you're going to basically send a useful article over. And typically we'll wait about 1 to 2 weeks between that question and sending over an article. But again, you're not going to want to send over just like 5 tips kind of approach. You want to send over something engaging, something that's going to position you and really provide value to them as well. I don't recommend sending podcasts or long videos or stuff like that. That's kind of a big commitment to ask for someone. So really would recommend sending something that's, they could click, skim in about 60 seconds to 2 minutes and actually engage with you there. So keep it something simple, short, and to the point. And again, try to ask another question on that and provoke a conversation there. Then in the fourth and final message of the drip, you're going to ask for a meeting. You're actually going to make a straightforward pitch and say, hey, was browsing your profile more, thought it could be worthwhile to connect. This is what I do. This is how we help, and I think I could help you. Would you be open to a quick conversation to talk more? So again, what you'll notice is that we're not selling in these first 3 messages. We're taking a very slow, casual conversation starting approach. And through starting those conversations, we're then going to kind of nurture and build those relationships over time. But this entire thing is built on the philosophy that people like to buy, they don't like to be sold. And so this is kind of the whole mentality here of waiting until that last one to even make a pitch. And I'll tell you that even if you go do this on your own, and the drips are kind of hard to do, if you go run this on your own, just do steps 1 and 2, and you will see results in that. Just in these 2, even if you never ever pitch someone, but you just send connection requests and ask questions to start conversations, you will see results and get customers out of that if you stick with even just those 2 pieces there. So the other thing I'll say is that if you do want to go and get the actual more details on the scripts or anything, if you go to leadcookie.com/ebook, do have some scripts there and everything where you can actually go get those for free, and I don't even require an opt-in. So you can just come snag that ebook and actually get all the scripts that we use for that outreach. Now, that is kind of again, the core piece of it, these connection requests, sending out those messages and starting conversations there. But if if that's too much work for you or you don't have time, the next tactic here is this is actually the first tactic that I started using on LinkedIn, which started generating results for me. And this is how you ramp up traffic to your profile, and you can do this in literally a couple minutes each day. So basically what I'm going to recommend is that you use this tool called Duck Soup. And what this tool is it's this Google Chrome extension. And what it does is you install it in Chrome and you put together a LinkedIn search Sales Navigator search queue. And then you're going to go set that, and you can go visit 500 profiles of people per day. You can do more. I typically sit safely at 500. And I really only use Duck Soup for these profile visits. You can use it for connection requests, which some of you might want to use. But for our sakes, we do our connection requests by hand, and we use Duck Soup just for profile visiting. Basically, what happens when you go and visit 500 profiles of people per day, well, basically for 2,500 people a week, you start showing up in this who's viewed your profile section. And when someone clicks on that, it brings up this list of all these people that have viewed their profiles. And what you'll see here again is the name of the person, their picture, and then here is their headline. And so basically, again, you can kind of see a little bit of information about these people. And if your headline is there and you hook someone and intrigue them in that headline, then they click into your profile and will basically see, it may be intrigued, they may add you as a connection request. And so what we typically see is somewhere between 5 to 30 inbound connection requests coming every single week as a result of using these tactics and using this Duck Soup approach. And again, whenever someone sends those, what we'll typically do is go through, maybe ignore some if they're not a right fit. But then when someone accepts them, I would say, hey, so-and-so, thanks for reaching out to connect. I was browsing your website and noticed and kind of have a personal touch there. Can I ask why you added me as a connection on LinkedIn? And then I put my name and my tagline here. Literally one of the first customers I landed from this tactic, I said this kind of answer. I said this question to them. And they said, well, your value proposition is hard to ignore. I'm looking to get new customers. We hopped on a call. They became a customer. So again, just this very simple, these leads, you don't get as many as the outbound connections, but they almost come in this kind of inbound manner where you're kind of hooking them and they don't really understand or realize what just happened. They were just browsing LinkedIn and suddenly stumbled on you. But it's a really interesting, great way to generate leads. And Duck Soup does all that for you. So you can literally set this to just run a few minutes every day and basically just walk away from your computer and let it do its thing. So in terms of the results, just what you can expect if you do this, what we see is most of our customers, where we're doing the 100 outbound connections per day and they have a good value proposition, is they're typically getting 4 to 20 qualified leads per month. That's kind of people that are getting on the phone, they're talking with, that are seriously engaging as potential customers. So if you've got a good value proposition, definitely great results there. And if you've got the capacity to go full speed, then this can work great for you. If you can't go full speed, you could still do this and still get several calls each month booked and still get great results from this. So the last section I want to go into here is everything I've told you so far is the baseline for how to generate leads. But we've had a lot of customers, and we learned this the hard way, that you've got to learn how to nurture and get these leads from LinkedIn onto a phone call. Otherwise, it's all pointless. And there's a lot of things you can do to totally screw that up along the way. So here is just a handful of tips on how to actually nurture these leads. The first tip is don't be super salesy. Where, if you notice, this entire approach is conversational, is trying to start a dialogue. The biggest mistake you could make is to do all these questions and have someone respond back and say, oh yeah, I get my leads through word of mouth and referrals, and then just immediately say, oh hey, I do LinkedIn outreach, would you want to buy our service, and here, would you like to schedule a call with me, here's a booking widget. Like that is the wrong way to go about it. Instead, what you want to do is you want to be conversational. You want to wait to pitch, and you want to try to kind of just have a conversation, learn more about the person's pain points, and only when they kind of really unveil a pain point through the conversation do you make an actual pitch, or when they really reveal that that you think you can help them, or you're really confident that you could based on what they're sharing. So don't be super salesy. Don't go just trying to pitch right away when someone engages. You got to take it slow, nurture that conversation, and build trust up with them over time. And with that, again, what I'm trying to say here is, start conversations and don't try to close the deal on LinkedIn. We've also had some of our customers where they wrote back these gigantic essays and trying to basically make the pitch. Your goal when it's on LinkedIn is to get it off of LinkedIn, get it to an email, and then from an email, get it to a phone call. Or you can do I recommend using booking widgets or something to basically get them onto that phone call as easily as possible so you can then make the sale on the phone call. So don't try to sell everything. You're just trying to create enough interest and intrigue on LinkedIn to actually get them to the phone call in that next stage. The other tip with this is to really research before you respond and personalize. So it's really easy to just start blasting through these, see someone's message, and then just, not even look at their LinkedIn profile and respond to them based on whatever they said. But you're going to see a lot more results if you can actually research and respond. So this guy said, hey, Jake, went and trolled through your site, and I'm genuinely interested in the process and what it all looks like at the end of the day. So this was someone that came through the Duck Soup visit process, and he actually went through and looked at the website as a result of that and added me as a connection. And so I said, hey, Jared, that's great to hear. I'm equally intrigued by Super Top Secret as well, which was his agency. Love the Far Cry work you guys did. I played the hell out of the early Far Cry games several years ago. So they did some design work for video games. So I complimented them on that, showed that I also reviewed his website as well. I said, let's set up a time to talk more. You can grab a slot on my schedule here. So again, gave him that booking widget, made it personal, and again, converted this one over to a phone call. The other thing you want to do is ask questions to both qualify the prospect and position yourself at the same time. And so this is very useful, especially if you get someone and you're not really sure if they're a good lead or you're trying to kind of validate that fit. What you'd want to do is kind of ask them a question to qualify. So this guy, he says, hey, cool, let me know more about what you do, smiley face. So I said, sure thing, Paul. I focus on helping agencies and consulting companies win more clients through a mixture of consulting and outreach services. Your list for Brandtastic looks quite impressive. I'm curious, how do you get most of your clients? So again, what I'm doing here is asking a question. I looked at his website, complimented their client list, and then I'm just trying to provoke a question to, again, help qualify this and also kind of move the conversation around client acquisition, which is kind of what I'm offering and focusing on there. So again, ask questions to keep that conversation going. What I like to say is that every single LinkedIn message should end with either a question or a call to action for a phone call. So you should never let it just kind of dead end the conversation without leaving some sort of next step that's going to toss the conversation back to them or the next action back to them. And then the last tip here is really just to move the conversation to email or phone. So you don't want to try to schedule on LinkedIn. That's really hard. So try to use typically a booking widget or get them to give you their email so you can follow up and schedule something that way. But don't try to close the thing on LinkedIn, and your goal is really to move the conversation off of there. And so that is really what I have to cover today. And at this point, happy to dive into further questions. Or if we need to screen share or do anything with LinkedIn, I am happy to do that as well.
Excellent, excellent presentation, my friend. Awesome, awesome material. A number of great questions came in. Should we just jump into them here? And if screen sharing is necessary, add that in?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Excellent. So the first question that came up, if people say they are all booked and have enough clients, how do you know when to probe further about potentially finding better clients?
Yeah, so if I'm doing outreach in kind of this lead generation capacity, and kind of what if someone says, hey, I'm booked up, I've got plenty of clients already, a lot of times I'm gonna say that I could probe further and just kind of try to keep asking questions. In some cases, if in a lot of those cases, some of those I might ask, like, oh, well, are those the exact clients that you need, or do you ever need any more in the future, or like to build up your pipeline further? So it's just kind of what feels natural for the conversation. But I would really just kind of keep nurturing and just asking questions off of that, and just see if you can kind of keep them engaged and build that further. But in some cases, it may just mean they're not interested in what you're doing. But I see if you can position it around the better clients thing, then that could be another angle, great angle to go as well.
Completely agreed. I absolutely love that approach. I always find that when I encounter an objection, if I'm able to turn it around, turn it into a question, get them to elaborate on it, it often finds out or turns out that it's not so much an objection as it is, oh, just additional information. And there might be a way for us to work together, but it takes that step of asking that clarifying question, moving the conversation forward and not just saying, they said no, let's stop.
Exactly. Yeah. That's just always trying to find just even like attempting to get around that. That could just be them, saying they're not interested, or it could, like you said, could be something that you can overcome, or just kind of, another way to get around that. So I love that approach.
So here's another question. Would this work for a new business that does not have a track record in their target market?
Yeah, so one of the things that I love about this or cold email is I'm a big believer that cold email or LinkedIn outreach are really great ways to validate a niche. And so I might, because there's a lot of people where they get started in a niche and it's just because it's all people that they've gotten through referrals, but then they try to get clients through outreach and their messaging just isn't resonating. And so my belief is if you can get a customer through outreach, then you've got a great value proposition, because it takes a really good value proposition to get outreach to convert and respond. And so, that's, I would highly recommend, using this kind of approach or even cold email to kind of validate that new level, that new niche or approach. So I think it's a great angle to kind of test out or work there. Even on our side, we're consistently trying to further nail down our buyer persona. And recently we said, okay, let's try management consultants of companies 11 to 50 and look at the principles of those firms, thinking that would be a good fit. And we actually found out after about a month and a half of doing this, we're like, wow, we're actually getting worse results than when we were targeting agency owners. And so it's just interesting learnings like that. But I look at, outreach is just a phenomenal way to test a market's approach to a niche. And so try running it for about a month, month and a half. And by that time, you should be getting a decent gut feel of how that's doing with a specific market. And if it works, double down on it. If it doesn't, pivot and try something different.
I absolutely love your answer there. The fact that you give such a specific timeline, like give it a month and a half to test out, that's perfect. I think that's such a great time frame to say, like, okay, are we getting results? Are we getting kind of results? Are we getting no results? You're able to assess at that time point. Absolutely, absolutely love that. Let me see here. Another question that's come in. How many people do we want to find under our ideal search criteria when we're looking in LinkedIn Sales Navigator?
Yeah, so if you go full speed at this and you do this 5 days a week at 100 a day, I mean, you can go through about 2,000 people a month. So you can do a pretty hefty volume if you go full speed. And so really it's up to how fast you want to go with this and how much time you're going to put into it. And then also, I really kind of recommend just looking at trying to build almost tiers of targeting. So whenever we're doing strategy for our clients, we're looking at, okay, like what is tier one? Like this is like the best buyers, they like the perfect fit. And I just get that as close as I can. And that might only be, like 1,500 prospects. And so we're going to go through that pretty quickly. But then we go to like tier two, which is kind of that next level of it, which might be a little bit broader or something like that. So I don't think there's any perfect number there, but I would say, depending on how, like, just get as narrow as you can on the first go at it, and then just kind of keep expanding out from there.
It's very much an iterative experimental process. We start with a hypothesis and an assumption, we test it, see what happens, and reevaluate and iterate on there.
Yep, exactly.
Let's see here. What advice do you have when it comes to creating that value proposition? Somebody left a wonderful question in the chat. It's a bit too long to read in full, but it boils down to how should you frame your value proposition statement if you have a large amount of experience in different areas? How should you know what to focus in on? If there's any resources or other experts you'd recommend people check out for an answer to this, please feel free.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the framework that I've always used to just keep it really simple is I help X do or accomplish Y through Z. So, I help whoever your target market is do or accomplish whatever the benefit that you're bringing them is, and then through Z, which is like the way you're doing that. And Philip Morgan, who we're both friends with, has a ton of content on this positioning stuff, and we've literally had several customers that have come referred by him, and they've got their positioning all tightened up, and then they do great with us. But that's kind of like for the people that are just looking for like the quick fix or the quick way to test it, that I help X do or accomplish Y through Z is, I think, a great framework to start with. And there's obviously a lot deeper you can go into positioning. But that's the framework I use. And if you've got a ton of expertise, then I would really look at, where do you have, work you're really proud of? Where is an industry that you want to focus on, that you're actually interested in and could see yourself being a specialist in? Like, you would be happy to go stand on a stage or put a stake out there and say, hey, I'm specialized in this space. I had one of our clients who was trying to figure this out recently, and he was almost going to specialize in the financial industry because he had all these financial clients. And then at the end, he's like, no, it's just not me. I just don't love finance. And he ended up specializing in React Native. And it's like, oh, okay, well, that's working. He's a coder and not a financial guy. He just happened to have a ton of financial experience. So some of it's getting, what's authentic to you, but and then it's also just putting the message out there in the market and testing it. You can dream up millions and millions of things in a silo, but until you actually put your message out there in the market and see how it responds, and again, outreach is a great way to test it, then you can't really know if it's resonating or not.
I like that a lot. And I completely agree. And I think for anybody that has a large amount of experience or has worked with a number of verticals and is saying, I have some challenges niching down, or I've worked with these 4 different verticals, what should I focus on first? Or who should I focus on? Or do I even focus on somebody? At least in my opinion, picking one, the people who most resemble the clients you want to work with long-term, as you put it, you want to put that stake out there saying like, hey, I specialize with X. Focus on that first, give it that good 6-week time trial, see what types of results you get. And then, hey, if it doesn't jive with you, if it doesn't feel like a good fit, move over to that next specialization on the list, or that next target market on the list, and run through the system, see how it works, and see how it connects with you.
I agree. That's awesome.
So with Sales Navigator, what criteria do you personally use for qualification other than vertical industry? The person asking the question notes that they've noticed employee count isn't usually that accurate. Private companies don't post revenue numbers. How do you go through that qualifying criteria phase?
Yeah, this might be a good time to actually screen share. I could pull up a little bit and just show some tricks in there, which might actually just be helpful for anyone who hasn't used Sales Navigator before. So let me just get this pulled up real quick, and I'll just kind of build a quick search queue on the fly here with everybody.
That'd be wonderful. Last time Jake stepped through this, it was eye-opening, highlight of the presentation for me.
Awesome. We will. All right. Can you all see my screen?
It just popped up for me.
Okay. Awesome. So basically, the first thing I do is I typically choose my second and my third connection, so I don't accidentally message anybody who I'm buddies with already. And then you can choose your location. And so let's, for this, say we want to target Oregon and go after people in the state of Oregon.
Beautiful state.
I thought so too. Or I can do Nevada, if that'd be better, Kai. So, but basically, then what I would do from there, you can target industries, and like I said, we could say let's say for this we want to go after digital marketing agencies. So I choose the marketing and advertising industry, and I want to go after this, 11 to 50 person companies, and then we'll say we want to go after, for right now, I'm just going to say CEO, and then I'll explain this more in a second. But on the previous question, there's a lot of things that happen here with LinkedIn and that create false positives. So what can happen here is you could have some of these people that they work at a company with 11 to 50 employees, but then they're also the CEO of their one-person, solo consultancy. So sometimes you get these false positives that come through because LinkedIn is kind of this self-selecting network. And that typically happens a lot when people have multiple job positions listed. And they're often like kind of freelancing on the side of another full-time opportunity. So that's just one thing to share, is that with LinkedIn, you're going to have people that come through that are just not always the right fit, and they're just going to kind of sneak through from this. But another thing, let's say I wanted to go and I want to target like specifically digital marketing agencies. I could go in here and I could put digital marketing in quotation marks. And that again drops me down to an even smaller kind of sample size here. And so basically now I'm targeting, CEOs of digital marketing agencies with between 11 to 50 employees. But again, a lot of those decision makers probably actually have different titles. They probably don't always just go by CEO. And so one of the really cool things you can do here is you can make these statements where I can say CEO or I'll say Chief Executive Officer. And it would help if I spelled executive right. And not offer or officer. And I could say or president or partner or founder or co-founder. So you can kind of come up with all these different titles or different things there. And I could say I don't want someone's assistant or intern or anything like that. So you can kind of come up with negative keywords if you're getting people in there as well. But what happens there is literally just kind of still looking at that same queue. We just now almost 5x the amount of results we have, and all these people that kind of use different words, founder, partner, or different ways to describe this position. So again, basically right here, we've got a pretty select queue. There will probably be some false positives that come through here. Some that maybe aren't actually a right fit, but these actually all look pretty good. This is one somehow professors tend to find their way through here a decent amount. So I might put I would be, if I was looking through these queues and I saw kind of a poor quality fit here, I would say, oh, okay, I definitely don't want professors in my thing. So I would say negative word on professor. And again, just kind of gets them out of the queue and it gets me more narrowed down. So if you start seeing people coming through that aren't a right fit, you can basically kind of use those negative keywords to get them out there. So that's one piece again on that. And again, we could also, say we wanted to do like PPC agencies or something like that. We can get really, really specific with this. So keywords is another kind of a really interesting way to use that as well. Now, another really cool thing, I'll show you one more feature. These whole things that I'm doing here with these parentheses by using these knots or all these pieces here is I'm basically doing what's called a Boolean search queue. And so that I just showed you as one for like a partner, but what I could also do is I could also say I want VP or vice president or director, and I close that parentheses and marketing. And so what I'm going to get here is basically anyone who's got a VP, vice president, or director in their titles and marketing. So we've got a director of marketing, a VP of marketing, a director of digital marketing, vice president of media here. So vice president of marketing, director of digital marketing and performance. So basically all these like different keywords. If I just put, director of marketing, I would miss this guy because he's director of digital marketing. So putting those kind of combining those and using the and feature here, which again, basically you just create your first set of parentheses with ors, you close it, and then you do an and marketing. And then I could still say, if I scroll down and I don't want this, membership is not a right fit, I could say not membership and exclude that person or those types of people from my search queue. So that's, and again, you could then, raise that up to the next tier of companies and everything like that, or open it up to new locations and everything. So if I were to open this and say we weren't geographically specific, and I put that just in the United States, you'll see we've got 5.2 thousand results in all of the USA with that. So those are some of the really handy tricks there. Happy to dive further or any other questions on that, but I thought that little Sales Navigator demo might be super useful for everybody.
That is absolutely awesome. One question that comes to mind: the Boolean different search parameters. Do you cover that in the Lead Cookie ebook?
There is a link to a YouTube video, and I actually have a blog post on my site that I can share the link to in the chat here. But I do have. Oh my God, how do I stop this?
We just went into it.
Basically, I can drop that link in the chat here real quick. I've got a video that kind of goes through those Booleans and teaches that in a lot more in depth and everything there.
Excellent. I'll if you share that with me, I'll make sure it gets sent out to people who attend the webinar.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Let me see what other questions come up. Let's end on this question, actually. What's your take on LinkedIn paid ads versus LinkedIn outreach?
Yeah, so LinkedIn paid ads, they are great, but they are really expensive. I've got a friend, AJ Wilcox, who his agency has actually spent more on LinkedIn ads than any other agency out there, as far as he knows, or last we spoke.
Wow.
And basically, what his advice is, if you're not willing to spend 5 grand a month, like don't even consider LinkedIn ads. You're literally looking at, I think, like a minimum click of $8. So like if you screw it up, like it's really expensive. And so you can get super targeted, like literally like their ads. You basically get access to LinkedIn Sales Navigator search queues. You can build a queue as small as 300 people and advertise to them. So you can get like really specific. You could literally like say, okay, I want, the vice presidents of marketing, and you could literally put like companies that you want to target and market to like 300 VPs of marketing at the exact list of companies you targeted. So you can get super focused with it. But it's really expensive. So, I would say unless you've got a good budget for it, I think LinkedIn outreach is kind of a lower cost way to approach things starting off.
Wonderful, wonderful answer. I've always wondered about that myself. So excited to hear the differences between the two. That
Mhm.
about takes us to time and wraps up all the questions for the webinar. Folks, thank you so much for joining me. Jake, thank you so much for joining me. This has been incredibly educational and informative. And all I can do is, again, say thank you. I hope everybody watching this and watching the replay takes a lot of lessons out of this webinar.
Yeah, definitely. If anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to me directly. Happy to answer however I can, or help you guys out if you need help. So yeah.